I am so nervous to film this video. I know I shared my income with you guys last year, but I feel like this year is equally as nerve-wracking because you now have a baseline and expectations on what someone can make as a YouTuber slash vintage reseller. So we'll see how this video goes today. Oh, I'm so nervous about doing it. But I know it's something important to do. There are not many people out there benchmarking and sharing the middle part of growing a business. You see the beginning, you're seeing the end where people are making bajillions of dollars, but you're not seeing the people that are in the middle. And there's not a lot of people, especially in the vintage space, that are sharing what they're making on Etsy or in a booth or even as a content creator doing content related to reselling. So I'm trying to be that person. I prepared a whole presentation again this year to share with you guys. We're gonna get into what I did right, what I did wrong, or what just didn't work. And then I'm gonna share how much I made as a vintage reseller YouTuber in 2025. And I'm very proud of it. And I'm very excited to share it, but also I just want to remind you all, I am a person on the internet willingly giving you this information. So please be kind in your comments back to me. Thankfully, last year it was very well received. And so that's why I'm doing it again. So in today's video, we're gonna talk about my YouTube ad revenue. We're gonna talk about my Etsy sales. And we're also gonna talk about all the other ways I'm making money online related to my vintage reselling business. So because I'm a corporate marketing professional and I was a consultant prior to doing this whole thing that I'm doing, I put together a year in review PowerPoint presentation because that's just the person that I am. And so this will help guide us in this video and keep us on track. There are juicy details in here, but there's just so much that went into last year. I actually took a large chunk of time off 2 different times of last year, and that of course affects your income. So I wanna make sure you're aware of those too. So anyways, we will go through this PowerPoint and I promise it's not gonna feel like you're in a meeting. So I wanna talk briefly about my mission statement because my mission statement is the reason why I make certain decisions in my business. First off, the reason why I'm a vintage reseller is not because I just love to go thrift shopping. I want people to find value in secondhand objects. I want people to be excited about what's already here on the planet. And the second part of my mission is that I love helping people grow their businesses. I find so much purpose and joy in shortcutting people's learning curves. We should not all be creating something from scratch without any sort of helping hand. And if by filming this content and sharing my journey is helping others with their journey and making them more successful, that is so satisfying to me. So that's like the twofold of my mission, is to encourage people to love secondhand vintage antique items and then also just encourage and educate people on how to run their businesses. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the meat of the presentation. So I wanna talk about my 2025 goals. I'm gonna put them on the screen, and this is where we're actually going to get into some exciting numbers and dollar values. So my 2025 goals, I wanted to grow my YouTube revenue to $4,000 a month in ad revenue. And I did successfully reach that at the end of 2025. So November and December, I made over $4,000 in ad revenue. That was admittedly a bit of a stretch goal for me, knowing where I was the previous year. And we'll talk about the year-over-year growth because it's just such an interesting story. But I was so excited by the end of last year, I finally hit $4,000 a month in ad revenue. Now, on a goal I did not check off was create my own e-commerce site. So I will probably never abandon the Etsy platform because I do enjoy selling on Etsy. I think it's a powerful platform. It's done really well for me. But there are perks to having your own website. One of them being you can run ads. I can have a blog on it. It's another place that I can post my videos. It's just a way for me to grow a community that is now offered on an actual selling platform, because selling platforms are meant to just sell, goods. They're not meant to sell all the other pieces of my business. I also had on my list to create my first online course, and I actually am very close to launching it, and we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. So that is very much in process, dare I say, ready to pre-sale. I wanted to host a live in-person workshop, and I did that in the fall. It was sold out. It was so much fun. It's the content that I tested and am using for my online course. And it also launched another income stream for me. Another thing I did not check off is I wanted to host a subscriber meet and greet. I had these grand plans that when I was in Europe that I would host a meet and greet while I was there at one of the markets, but It just did not happen. I did, though, do a one-on-one meet and greet with Angela, who has a YouTube channel who you guys probably watch. If not, you should check her out. She's in the UK. We shop together. I love her and adore her. And I did do that. So I know I didn't like have a whole meet and greet with several people, but I did get to like make a connection with someone that I wanted to for a long time. So that part was a win. So I guess I could say it's kind of like a maybe, but definitely wasn't a whole subscriber meet and greet. And the final 2025 goal was to maintain an average of $3,000 a month on Etsy. So 3,000 has always been kind of like my low level baseline. And last year I earned a lot more than that each month. And I know you're probably like, why does she look like she's so disappointed in how much she made? Because I'm like, I earned a lot more than that. Which I know earning a lot of money sounds like quite the problem to have. I know it sounds ridiculous. And honestly, I probably should cut that out and refilm it, but we'll just keep going on. So when I have high selling months on Etsy, that means I have high shipping months on Etsy. And last year I was very burnt out on shipping. 2024, I ended the year very burnt out on shipping. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to maintain, 3,000 is great as I'm trying to grow YouTube and other income streams. But the problem is I'm a reseller. As I find the stuff, I want to sell the stuff. And so I was finding the stuff, so I was selling the stuff, and I had really strong months. So that was definitely a check mark. I definitely completed it, but not without a lot of added stress. So we will talk about my mental state at the end of 2025 as it relates to the reselling piece and the inventory piece. Yeah, we'll talk about that. That's a juicy bit for later in the video. But on the face, check that off. So now I want to highlight some important moments in 2025 because a lot of these moments and milestones are the reason why I made more money in 2025 compared to 2024. So kicking off the year, I did the Etsy Success Workshop. So I had a partnership and sponsorship with Etsy, which was a dream come true. I can't believe that I was the face of vintage for Etsy last year. It just was such a pinch me moment. Not only did I obviously make money from that partnership, but I also just got such increased visibility and just validation as a seller and as an expert in the field. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. It was completely unexpected when that email came through. I was just blown away. And I had a few other sponsorships last year that I was proud of that were unexpected, income streams for me. I don't do a lot of sponsorships because I don't ever want to encourage people to buy stuff just to buy stuff. Okay, so moving on to May of last year, that was just one of those moments in a person's career that you're like, okay, this is the end of one thing and the beginning of something so very exciting. So I never was sure if I would ever leave my corporate consulting job. I love consulting. I think it's funny because I introduced one-on-one consultations, which is basically consulting at the end of last year. So I kind of found my way back, but in a different way. But I actually stopped doing client work May of last year. And I just one day looked at all of my financials. I looked at the year in review. I was getting and seeing so much growth in certain areas that I just had this thought that, you know what? This is the moment that I am allowed to leave my corporate clients behind, transition away from that profession and into this YouTube reselling space completely. And so I made the decision and I told my clients, I'm like, I love you dearly, but it's time for me to do this whole thing. And they all knew what I was up to outside of what I was doing with them. And so they knew this was coming at some point. So it was not a surprise. So anyways, May was big because that's when I left my corporate career. In May, I also had my highest Etsy sales month of 2025, $5,483. Sorry, the print on my phone is so teeny tiny. June was a different month. I went to visit family in the UK and I actually took largely that entire month off. So that is definitely reflective in my income. I think I actually put my Etsy shop on vacation mode, which I never do. And so I definitely had less Etsy sales because I wasn't doing videos on YouTube at the same volume and consistency that I had. My ad revenue went down. But I had been making so much prior to that, I felt like I could take that time off. In October is when I hosted my first paid workshop. And so that was an unexpected income stream for me. I did not expect to actually do that. I thought I would end the year having not done a workshop, but then Curiosities, where I have a vintage booth, they opened up a flux space. So they have a new event space, which is amazing. There's so many markets that go on in there now and special events. And they allow dealers to host an event for free. We didn't have to pay anything for the space. They designated 1 day a week, and that's when we were allowed to do it, which was great. So it allowed me to test out the content that I'm putting in my online course, which we'll talk about. And so that was very exciting. I also got to meet a lot of you guys, and that's really the catalyst for kicking off one-on-one consultations, which I did at the end of the year, which have been phenomenal, which is, yes, me finding my way back into my corporate consulting gig a little bit, because I'm doing one-on-one consulting, not unlike what I was doing for my clients, but in a different way, because we're talking about a shared interest, hobby, and business, which is vintage reselling and social media and YouTube, things I love to talk about. So there are a lot of milestones that definitely contributed to the fluctuations in my income. Taking time off, of course, decreased my income, but I had all these other income streams that came on strong, some unexpected, that were able to make up for it. So that's why, even though I took a lot of time off, I was able to actually still end the year in a very positive place. So now we're going to talk about what worked and didn't work last year, because there's something to be learned in both scenarios. So on YouTube, what worked is I did do 2 videos a week on YouTube. At least I tried to keep up that schedule. I did introduce Goodwill Bins videos. Any Goodwill Bins video or Goodwill video in general, they just all perform and outperform every other type of video, generally speaking. There were 2 other videos that I did last year that did really well that weren't Goodwill videos. One was my income video, which is again why I'm doing it again this year as an act of service. And also it was a very good business move, apparently, to do a how much I made video. And then my trends video was a surprise. Usually when I do educational content, it just doesn't perform as well as Goodwill videos. I don't want to just be a Goodwill person. I watched the Crazy Lamp Lady when she was talking about kind of the transitions that she was going through with her business. I know many of you probably watch her channel. And I found it just very interesting and validating. And she spoke a lot to what I was feeling. Is like, you don't want to be one note, even though that one note is driving so much of your business, because it can burn you out, and we're so multifaceted. And so I love doing the educational content, even though the educational content doesn't perform as well as the Goodwill content. And the YouTube Bins content in general, I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with, because it performs really well, which is great because it brings in more ad revenue. But I don't love shopping at the Goodwill Bins. And I know many of you think it's because I'm some sort of snob, because you tell that to me in the comments. Like, you're so negative about it. It's because you're a snob. And it's like, no, it's not because I'm a snob. I don't mind digging and finding gross treasures. I do that all the time. I just get really sad when I see just how much there is out there in the world, and how much of it is trash, and how much will end in the landfill. Being there is a bit of a downer for me, because I'm just reminded in the moment of how much waste there is. That's the real reason why I don't like going to the Goodwill Bins. It's not because I'm a snob, I promise. It's because every time I'm there, I'm like, oh man, there's just so much stuff. But anyways, in a nutshell, everything I did with the Goodwill Bins, the income video, trends. I'll probably do more trends videos. I'm gonna dabble in a few more lengthier videos to see if there's an appetite for those on occasion. But educational content, I have to remind myself, it's just not gonna perform as well as the others, but it's important for me to do, because it drives me as an expert in the industry. It's helpful for you guys, which is important. It's helpful to get one-on-ones, which I'm starting to do, and will lead into this online course that I'm creating that we're going to talk about. Okay, so on the reselling side specifically, so on Etsy, because I am hauling so much on YouTube, my Etsy sell-through rate is pretty high. Anytime I do a video, it's like a 75 to 100% sell-through rate of the stuff that I post on Etsy following the video, because YouTube is an extremely powerful marketing platform. And so that was great. And then some of the things that, were left over, then Etsy then sells those things. That's why being on Etsy is great, is because it's also marketing your items when you're not marketing your item. In my vintage booth, I had my highest revenue month since I actually had a booth. It was at Tiny Brambles at the end of last year. I made over $3,400, which was great. I also participated in several markets because Curiosities, where I have another booth, they have that new event space. I participated in a few of their like digger, flash sale, big deal type of events where the resellers and dealers come in and they just like basically liquidate their inventory. It's a great sourcing opportunity, but also is a great way for me to get rid of inventory that had been sitting. And so I ended the year with very little like unsold like inventory that I wasn't excited about. So that was awesome. One thing I also did in my vintage booth this year is I actually partnered more with my mom. So it's really hard for me to maintain this whole thing that I'm growing. I'm doing all this YouTube stuff. I'm doing the reselling stuff, you know, whether it's on Etsy or in a booth. And my mom loves to thrift. She's very good at it. She's who I got all of this excitement around antiques from and vintage pieces from. She's also the person who I've always looked to in terms of decorating. She's always been a beautiful decorator. My mom wanted to do reselling in a more meaningful way. And so because I'm split so much, she is the person that has been largely stocking and managing my Curiosities booth. And that's what we worked together on all of last year. So I would do the resets with her and we would talk about the inventory we would be putting in. So it's definitely very collaborative, but she did a lot of the legwork in doing it. She would call me from the thrift store. We would talk about what she was finding. We would decide together what to put in. And then she also was empowered to kind of go into categories that I never would have thought to go into. Like she, you know, was dabbling in like, you know, cute, like strange, whimsical purses. And so it's fun to have her experiment and grow things that are different than what I would have done. So that worked out really well to be able to, I was like 100% on my tiny Brambles booth and then collaboratively doing the Curiosities booth together, but allowing me to be a little bit more hands-off. So I don't need to go in all the time because mom is in there in collaboration with me doing it. So that was really exciting. So that really worked well last year, partnering with my mom on one of my booths. It took the pressure off of me to have to do it all on my own, and also is something we can do together. So the thing that didn't work on the reselling side of my business is just like every year, my inventory levels. Because I'm so visible online and because I have high sell-through rates, which is fantastic, I really struggle to find enough inventory. Because I'm doing YouTube and these other things, I can't go out sourcing every single day. When I tell people that I source just once, maybe do another stop a week. Usually I have one full day that I'm doing it because that's the day I'm capturing the thrift with me footage for you guys. People are just surprised that that's my sourcing strategy. They just assume I'm pounding the pavement all the time. But when you're doing these other things, you're not just doing the reselling business, you can't go and source every single day because then you're not cutting your YouTube videos and getting those up online. You're not shipping things out. You're not doing all these other things you should be doing in your business. You're just constantly finding inventory. So this is the thing that's very hard for me still to this day, trying to figure out how to manage getting enough volume in while doing all these other things. So looking at my 2026 goals, my first goal is definitely a bit of a stretch. I wanna grow my YouTube ad revenue to $6,000 a month by the end of this year. I wanna create and launch my first online course, which we are very close, which we're gonna talk about at the end of the video. My next goal, again, is to maintain an average of $3,000 a month in Etsy sales. Now, I know this probably looks odd because you're like, well, that was your last year goal. Why wouldn't you want to increase it this year? And also, you're known to make more than that on Etsy every month. It's because I want to maintain a baseline of sales on Etsy because I like the platform. I also want to deliver the goods to you guys. I am a reseller after all. I need to sell the stuff that I'm picking up. But also, Etsy sales are the things that burn me out more than doing other things in my business. And it's not the Etsy platform, it's the shipping of it. It's the shipping. It's always the shipping for me. Always the shipping and handling of goods is what always gets me all exhausted. Just mentally exhausted. So when I hit higher sales volume months is when I become depleted. And I'm trying to be good to myself and say, I have other revenue streams. I don't have to always do and grow the thing that I find the most challenging for me, just because shipping is just something, even though I've done it for nearly a decade, I just still don't love it. So anyways, so that's why that goal is still it's just maintaining. It's just maintaining. I want to start selling on eBay, which I know you guys are probably just in fits of hysterics because I just said I do not want to do any more sales on Etsy because of shipping. And I'm saying, but on the other hand, I'm going to sell on eBay. And so the reason why I want to sell on eBay is because my son wants to get into reselling. Bless him. He's just about 7. And the stuff that he is picking up, of course, is not stuff that aligns with my Etsy shop or in my booth. So I'm going to set up a little eBay store and we're going to do that together. And also, I feel like as a one-on-one consultant now to vintage dealers, I feel like I need to have some experience on the platform outside of just me selling my old iPhone. Like, I feel like I need to understand that platform a bit better to continue to be an expert in this space. So that's another reason why I want to dip my toe into eBay, not to become a full-on eBay seller. And then the final goal is I want to hire my first contractor or support person. I have to figure out what that looks like because it's going to require me to do certain things differently. It's just putting the systems in place in order to be able to bring someone on is the challenging thing. And I know many of you right now are thinking, and you're connecting the dots, well, then hire someone to ship for you since you hate it so much. But the problem with that is I would have to standardize what I'm selling, standardize my setup, and also I do the shipping in my home, and then I'd be inviting someone into my home, and our margins are not so amazing that we can't just hire anyone we can. I'm running a pretty lean business. Now, when I tell you how much I made last year, I mean, I'm proud of that number, but I'm not like getting ready to hire, a dozen people to support this empire. That's not where I'm at right now. And also the cost of living in Oregon is a lot, and the wages that people expect here are a livable wage. 25, 30 plus dollars an hour. It's not like I'm hiring someone, for $7. I have to hire someone and pay them a meaningful amount of money. I want to do that. And also I need to have it make sense for my business. So that's why I haven't done that yet, is because I need to make sure financially it's worthwhile for me and also worthwhile for the person who I'm hiring. So yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. And also trying to figure out what parts of my business, if I hired someone, would actually increase my earnings and actually give me my biggest bang for my buck. So if you're out there running a business like mine, or you have any insight into how to determine and what your experience has been like hiring someone for a task and how it transformed your business, by all means, I am all ears, and please comment down below. So now we're at the part of the presentation that you guys are the most excited for, and you guys have been wildly patient as I have taken you on a journey through 2025. So we're gonna talk about my Etsy income. We're going to talk about how much I made on YouTube. We're going to talk about boost markets, and we're also going to talk about all the affiliate income that I made. When I talk about these numbers, I will share which ones have all the expenses taken out and which ones don't. I think it's more helpful to know what the take home is rather than the exciting sales figure, because I can say, oh, I sold, this much money, and you're like, okay, great, that sounds amazing, but how much were your cost of goods? How much were your expenses? What were the platform fees? How much did you pay on shipping? There's just all that other stuff that has to be subtracted out of that figure. And so I wanted to do that up front, like I did in my last income report. So on Etsy, last year, I processed 556 orders. So compared to 2024, I did 460. So I definitely grew the amount of orders. Also keep in mind, I took most of June off, and I would say 3 weeks of December off. And so that definitely impacted how many sales I had, because taking away 2 months when you have a sales volume like mine is actually quite meaningful decrease in sales. While I have growth on Etsy, taking that much time off, especially in a high volume, high earning month like December, makes a difference. So my sales total for last year on Etsy was $34,116. So my actual sales were a lot higher than that. But that $34,000 figure, I've subtracted shipping and platform fees. Compared to the previous year, I was around $29,000 in Etsy sales after you subtracted all my expenses. And then last year, it was $34,000. So that was like a nice bump up, and I was excited and proud of that figure. In terms of YouTube, this is where it gets exciting for me, because YouTube is a way to make money where you don't actually have to necessarily do any more to make more money. As long as you keep pumping out videos and the videos are being watched, then your views just compound and compound and compound, especially on YouTube, because all of the old videos are making you money at the same time as your new videos. And so it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Usually when you want to make more money in your business, you have to do more. I have to sell more on Etsy. I would have to do more client work to make more money. But with YouTube and content creation, usually you can make more money doing the same thing. Just every year you do it and you get better at it, you get more money. And so that is definitely the story of YouTube in 2025. Okay, so last year I'm so nervous about it, I can't even get the words out. Okay, so last year on YouTube, I published 63 videos. Prior to that, the previous year, I actually did 70. So I did less videos last year, but I made double the amount of money, which is amazing. So anyways, so my ad income revenue, and there are no expenses in ad revenue on YouTube. The money that YouTube pays you is the money that you earn. There's like no cost of goods in that. So my ad income that I made on YouTube last year was $32,743. So that's how much YouTube paid me for my videos, which I think is incredible because the year prior, in 2024, I made $16,000. And then the year prior to that, I made $662 total for 2023. So 2023, $662 total. 2024, $16,000. And then last year, $32,000. So that just shows you how it just marches up, 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 assuming you continue to, feed the platform. So I'm hoping next year that number is even higher, even higher. And that's why I'm shooting for the moon on that $6,000 a month in ad revenue goal of mine. But that was just so amazing to me to be able to double the ad revenue from the previous year. And I actually did 7 less videos. And 7 less videos is a meaningful amount of videos, because when some videos can make you $1,000 a video in views, when you do less of those, I mean, you do feel it and see it. So that's why I was just amazed and just so ecstatic knowing I did less, technically a few less videos, but made even more, double, the amount of money. So YouTube was phenomenal last year. Okay, so now on to vintage booths and markets. So when I talk about the booths, I'm not factoring in Curiosities, even though my mom and I have shared kind of revenue in that. It's a tricky thing to calculate with expenses, so I'm keeping the Curiosities side out. Between my vintage booth and the markets that I did, because I did a few markets, unexpected markets, I made $16,000. And I think that's amazing. Now, I want to be transparent about being a booth owner. I always make rent. So I always make rent on my booths. But I have months where I don't make a ton more than rent. And I have months where I make a staggering amount more, like significantly. And usually it's tied to one time of year. Obviously, we all make more money at the end of the year near the holidays, but also is tied a lot to how often I am stocking my booth and how often I'm there. And I am not necessarily a good booth owner all the time. Depending on how much I have going on, I may not be actively sourcing stuff and putting it in my booth. When I'm out there and I take this amazing stuff that I find out thrifting and I take it to my booth, that's when my booth performs better than when I take all that amazing stuff and I put it on Etsy. And I have a tendency to put stuff on Etsy over my booth because, in my booth, this stuff does sell, but it takes more time because I have to wait for the person to come in. Where with a 75 to 100% sell-through rate after my YouTube videos, when I drive people to Etsy, like it's sometimes can be hard to make a case to take stuff to my booth when I know I can sell it like this, within 24 hours of posting online. And so the months that I definitely was neglectful with my booth are the months that I only made maybe a few $100s beyond my rent. But the months that I was actively there, putting in the good stuff, putting in the time, making sure I was doing more, was when I made, over $1,000+ over my rent. So that's something to keep in mind as a booth owner, because we all have moments of neglecting our booth, and many of us just don't know how much time we should be spending in our booth. And that how much time I should spend in a booth was definitely very obvious based on my fluctuations in sales, because a lot of the vendors that are there that are actively there every week and they don't sell online and their stuff is going only to their booth, they definitely are outperforming me because they're not split between different, sales channels. They are putting all of the effort in their spaces, and that definitely is reflective in their sales in their booth. So that's something that I'm trying to get better at. I think by the end of last year, I definitely was figuring out a way to get more good quality things in my booth, and that definitely was reflective in what I was earning. So at the beginning of the year, I had a lot of other things going on. I had a lot of travel, and then also I had sponsorships and other things that I was doing that I just was not as present as I should have been. But that being said, in 2024, my vintage booth and markets that I did only earned me $8,700, and I doubled that last year. So all the effort I did put in definitely made a difference, which was great. So in terms of affiliates, sponsorships, one-on-ones, and events. So in 2024, I did, I think, 1 or 2 very teeny tiny sponsorships because it kind of just worked out with what I had going on. Last year, I had a lot more going on. So I'm not going to talk about how much I made each sponsorship, but in terms of like my affiliate income, which is like Amazon and otherwise, sponsorships, one-on-ones that I did, and then the event that I did, that brought in $12,114. The previous year, I had only $570 in revenue that wasn't vintage reselling or YouTube. So that was a huge increase from $570 to over $12,000. So when you take out all of my expenses, last year, my business, before I, of course, pay taxes, made me over $70,000. So I think that's great. I think that's amazing. The year prior in 2024, the whole thing that I did made me $42,000, which I was very excited about. And then last year it was $70,000, which I'm extremely excited about. That's after I backed out, all my expenses. And I'm very proud of that number because I feel like that's an amazing jumping off point, knowing what could happen this year and knowing what every year I'm able to make happen year over year. It's just all the work is starting to compound. It's leading to more lucrative, business decisions and revenue streams. So yeah, 70,000 may surprise you guys, and you might be like, that's amazing. Others might be like, she's still a long way off from building that empire she's hoping she's building. But I was very proud of that figure. So just because I shared how much I made does not mean this video is done, because there's still very juicy things to talk about. In particular, my mental state at the end of last year. So at the end of last year, I experienced burnout again, worse than the previous year, which I'm sure comes as no surprise to you guys. I just laid out all the things I did, which was a lot. The type of burnout that I experienced was not necessarily like business burnout. It was a different burnout, and it was a burnout on stuff. I just could not handle or process or buy any more things. It got so bad by the end of the year that I couldn't even film a Thrift With Me video because I didn't even want to set foot in a thrift store because I could not even just look at shelves with stuff. I didn't want any Christmas presents because I didn't want anything else coming into my house. I didn't want to decorate for Christmas because the thought of bins coming out of my attic with stuff in them made me absolutely paralyzed. So my relationship with objects by the end of last year had deteriorated quite significantly. And so that burnt out is kind of one of the reasons why I'm trying not to grow the reselling side of my business. There's this tendency always to keep going, but you're allowed to maintain what is considered the right size of business for you. You don't always have to grow at the expense of other things. You're allowed to have parts of your business that you're maintaining because that's the volume that brings you the most joy and peace, and other parts that you're like comfortable with doing more because it's less taxing on your brain. So anyways, these are the things that I'm reminding myself. These are the things I think about as I'm planning, every year and as I adjust throughout the year. Now, did I decorate for Christmas? Of course I did, but it was painful. It definitely was painful. So we're gonna end the video with something very exciting, which is the launch of my first online course. Now, this is something I was planning to do at the end of last year, but we know why I didn't, because I was in a state of burnout and I was in no position to launch an online course. But I'm so excited. This is something that I've been working on for a long time. It is based off of the workshop that I did at the end of last year. So it's a social media course specifically for vintage resellers. So anyone who sells in a booth, weekend markets, they sell online through a platform. The course and the strategy that I talk about and teach in it is for anyone, no matter how you're selling your vintage stuff. So it largely focuses on Instagram strategy and then also YouTube strategy. Those are the two platforms that I find the most value in. But a lot of what I'm talking about in the course absolutely applies to other platforms like TikTok or Facebook. So it is something that is just good best practices as you're creating any type of content online. But specifically speaking, the two platforms that have been the most successful for me and the ones that I advocate the most for people to be on are Instagram, everyone, and then YouTube, those that feel like they really want to get into video content creation. But the point of the course is to have you develop a social media strategy that fits your goals and your skill level and whatever you want to do in your comfort level and your time. And there is a social media strategy really for everybody. I know a lot of us just see what big accounts are doing, but there's a lot of people that don't have big followings, but they have the right following and they have the right strategy, and it's moving more product for them, and it's just increasing sales in their business in a way that they didn't know was possible with such a small following. So if you're interested in learning more about the course, I have a QR code on the screen, and then I also linked it down below. If you scan the QR code or if you click the link, it will take you to the sales page for the course. You'll see all of the 14 modules and what you'll be learning and just more information on, what you can expect from taking it. I decided to pre-sell it because I wanted to be able to offer like a big discount to people that decide to purchase it before it actually goes live in February. And so this will be the lowest price this course will be. And so if you purchase the course now, just know the actual full length, course and all the modules will be delivered in February, and the date of delivery is on the sales page. So anyways, more information by clicking the link or scanning the QR code. Okay, so we are now at the end of the video, and before I let you go, this is probably the hardest part of the video for me to get through, because anytime I talk about being grateful, the blessings, I always tear up. I'm already tearing up again. You guys don't know this, but I have basically had a few crying breaks before I filmed this particular take. So if my makeup looks different, it's because I already had blubbered a lot. And I'm like, okay, take number 12 to try to get through it. So anyways, I just want to say thank you all so very much for being here, for watching me build this business, for being part of me building this business, for being the reason why I'm building this business, and being the reason why I'm having success with this business. You're buying from me, you're watching my videos, you're sending me encouraging messages, you're being my cheerleader. You are just the reason why this is all possible. Shoot. I was doing so good this take. I was doing so good. So anyways, thank you so much for watching today. Thank you in advance for checking out my online course that will be launching in February. And I look forward to all the things we're going to do together. In 2026, I have a lot planned, so much more planned than even what I shared today, which I'm sure is not surprising because I have slides on slides on slides, but we were not going to go through a 30, 40 slide PowerPoint. That would be too much. But if you were interested in knowing even more detail about what I have planned for 2026, of course, let me know, and maybe I'll film a video about it. But that is all I have to share today. Thank you so much again for watching today, and I can't wait to see you in all the videos that I do this year. Testing the microphone, testing the microphone.